And this may be the first Obon service many of you have attended, as most were usually very busy working at their workstation during our regular Obon festival. But this year, the temple decided we would have a non-public event and a truly religious event that creates one that our members and families could enjoy and participate in. So please enjoy today's services, activities, and welcome back to the temple. Be advised that the congregation will join in sutra chanting and singing of Gathas, but please remain back. We will now have opening reading by Minister Assistant Juan.
Please join me in Gassho. Entrusting is the mind full of truth, reality, and sincerity. The mind of ultimacy, accomplishment, reliance, and reverence. The mind of discernment, distinctness, clarity, and faithfulness. And the mind of aspiration and exaltation. The mind of delight, joy, gladness, and happiness. Hence, it is completely untainted by the hindrance of doubt. Although they neither seek nor the indescribable, inexplicable, and inconceivable virtues of the pure land of happiness, those who entrust themselves to the primal vow are made to acquire them. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo.
Well, one is a special time that families gather and reunite to remember their family members who have passed away. A special part of today's service is Hatsubon, a remembrance of temple members who passed away since last year's Obon. As I read their names, the Hatsubon families are invited to a soko. A family member will light the candle in front of their loved one's lantern. Minister Assistant David Correia will be assisting, and they are in order that from right to left to right, but in the order that I call them. First, two, Gassho Thompson. Yumiko Takeuchi. Sato Minamitsu. Hideko Minami. Nobu Nishihamada. So now please join in the Chitru chanting, Sambu Jo, on page 24, followed by Sambu Ge, page 79.
Today on this occasion, the Salinas Buddhist Temple Hatsubon Service. Members of the Sangha, remember to come before I meet the Buddha, in memory of our beloved members, friends, and family who passed away since our last Obon service. With deepest reverence and thankfulness to the all-embracing wisdom and compassion of Amida, we reaffirm the three harmonies. I go to the Buddha for guidance, I go to the Dharma for guidance, I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Kia Roots, Namo Kia Ho, Namo Kia Soul.
We will now have a paperwork or shuffle by representatives. Salinas Grammar School. Salinas YBA. Salinas Buddhist Women's Association. Buddhist Temple of Salinas. All please rise for the singing of Gassho, Inshu Shuka, on page 216. Remain standing for reading of the three treasures, one on page 8 by Minister Assistant General.
A threefold refuge. Difficult is to receive human form, now we are needed. Difficult is to hear the Dharma of the Buddha, now you hear it. Do not cross over to the truth in the present life. In what life shall we cross over? Let us with sincerity and true reverence take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we, together with all sentient beings, awaken to the great way of enlightenment and to the unsurpassed intent of the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we, together with all sentient beings, and into the storehouse of the Dharma, become the light of the wisdom of ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we, together with all sentient beings, become units in true accord, in harmony with all things. The fearless, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rare to encounter, even in many hundreds of thousands of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Mira Butsu. Namo Mira Butsu. Namo Mira Butsu. Namo Mira Butsu. Please be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Y'all take seats in the front. I'm so glad to see so many of you here for our Hatsubon service. This is a very auspicious and important service that we observe as Yodo Shinchu Buddhists. And I want to once again acknowledge the families who are observing Hatsubon this year. And once again share with you the names of the families who are honoring today. Sue Yasuko Thompson, who passed away on June 27, 2021. Suzue Oyama, who passed away on August 11, 2021. Makoto Baba, passed away October 12, 2021. Himiko Katayuchi, who passed away October 24, 2021. Masu Abe, who passed away on October 30, 2021. Usako Yonemitsu, November 7, 2021. Yuriko Hanamoto, February 12, 2022. Suehiko Dan Ikeda, April 22, 2022. Hideko Minami, July 1, 2022. And Nobu Nishihakamasa, July 9, 2022. I wanted to read these names again to you because they are family members, they are friends, they are family members, they're part of our sangha, and we should remember them always. And it's kind of very emotional when you look up here and you see 10 lanterns, 10 names, 10 losses in our sangha this year. And there are, of course, many others who passed during this past year, but today we honor these 10 names. I want to make it clear that I am not your guest speaker today. I'm just the resident minister who's introducing our guest speaker, who is not here because he came down with COVID. And so he is zooming in here. Are we okay there? Is he there?
Yeah, he's on
Okay, good. Otherwise, I have to give you a talk. I want to remind everybody, though, that Hatsubon, is about not just about these 10 names, but about all of your family members who passed. And in our temples, we recite the Remembrance, Namo Amida Butsu. And when you say Namo Amida Butsu, you're calling out to your mother, you're calling out to your father, to your husband, to your wife, to those who passed. And they are returning that call through Namo Amida Butsu. So each time we are saying those very simple words, we are calling out to our parents, our grandparents, our wives, and brothers and sisters and friends. And they are returning that call to us. So I am very sorry that Reverend Hamasaki wasn't able to join us today in person, but thanks to technology, he's able to join us through this online. Reverend Hamasaki is one of our newer ministers in the Buddhist churches of America. He grew up in Berkeley, where he attended the Berkeley Buddhist Temple growing up. And his interest in studying the Dharma was nurtured by his Dharma school teachers. And during his high school years, he was very active in the junior YBA, and it furthered his interest in the Dharma. After graduating, he received his Bachelor's of Arts in Religious Studies from the University of California at Davis, and went on to receive his Master's in Buddhism from the Institute of Buddhist Studies. He was first assigned to the Central California District, and then transferred to the Sacramento Betsuin, where he is currently the interim Limba, as well as supervising minister of Florence and the Placer Buddhist Temple. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Reverend Hamasaki.
Just a second. Just a second.
Sound is not good.
Okay, well, they're getting that ready. I guess I'll share with you a few things. I'm sure Reverend Hamasaki will mention this, but Hatsubon is also called Kangye, which means a gathering of joy. And it might seem counterintuitive that we have a memorial service for those who have passed away, and yet we call it a gathering of joy. But we call it a gathering of joy because it is joyful to know that our deceased family members have been born in the pure land of the Buddha. And this, I hope, gives us some comfort, knowing that they are reborn into the land of the Buddha. That's why we call it Kangye, or gathering of joy. Just give me a signal when you're ready.
Problem getting the sound.
If I keep talking, they'll just come sideways. We have to volunteer some conversation. So I'm sure that Reverend Hamasaki is also going to tell you the story of Obon. It dates back to the time of Buddha and his disciple, Obon. And Obon is really a story about relationships between parents and children, and how that relationship is full of joy, but sometimes full of anxiety as well. It can be both wonderful and yet taxing as well on us. So it can be two worlds. But one of the anxieties that the disciple Mokuden felt was he was worried about his mother. And I think that all of us who lost someone, we worry about, so what happens to them after they die? Well, in the case of this disciple of Mokuden, he had a lot of anxiety worrying about his mother. What happened to her after she died? Well, the Buddha instructed him to hold a memorial service, much like what we're doing today, to light candles, to make offerings, burn incense, to hold a memorial service. And a part of that memorial service also was the practice of dana. And dana, as you know, is the practice of selfless sharing, to give to the temple, give to a charity, but do it selflessly. So Mokuden does this. And it relieves him of all the anxiety he felt. As the Buddha tells him, your mother has been born in the pure land of the Buddha. So there's no longer any anxiety. So he dances for joy. And that's the first Pomodori, was dance.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you everyone for bearing with us. If you could all please join me in Gassho. Now, kalamas don't go by reports, by legends, by traditions, by scripture, by logical conjecture, by inference, by analogies, by agreement through pondering views, by probability or by the thought this contemplative is our teacher. When you know for yourselves that these qualities are skillful, these qualities are blameless, these qualities are praised by the wise, these qualities, when adopted and carried out, lead to welfare and to happiness, then you should enter and remain in them. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Hello, and thank you to Reverend Shinseki and to the Buddhist Temple of Salinas, everyone working on getting me able to come in there virtually. I apologize that I couldn't be there today. As Reverend Shinseki said, I got COVID, and so I'm still getting over it. So please forgive me if I sound kind of gravelly or have to cough or something. So today we are observing Hatsubon, which is part of the Obon season for the families who have lost a loved one in the past year. And during this time of year, we have traditions such as food festivals, bonodori dancing, and also things like people go to their family's grave sites and visit and clean the area. This isn't the only time that we do this. You can do this any time of the year, but it serves as a wonderful reminder for us to do it. Currently, as mentioned, I am assigned to the Sacramento Buddhist Church, and I oversee the Placer Buddhist Church, which is where my grandparents actually went. They're buried in a cemetery near that temple, and as the Obon season rolled around, I thought to myself, I have to go out there, got to go clean the graves, and really, I should be going more often since I'm out here and I go that direction. I wonder, does anyone else have these kind of thoughts that we think something we should have done or we ought to do? Kind of these like should or ought to like statements. These sorts of thoughts can be characterized in psychology as introjections. So I minored in psychology. Psychology is something that familiar is maybe a strong word, but it interests me. And so I like looking into like psychological things and stuff. And so this introjection perhaps can be explained in terms of something else that we know. So maybe some people are familiar with the term of projection. So when we project, we unconsciously attribute feelings onto other people. So for instance, if someone's feeling guilty, then they may lash out and make accusations of other people. Or if someone feels insecure or vulnerable, they might bully other people by projecting those feelings of insecurity or vulnerability onto those. I hope this doesn't make it more confusing, but from that, we know what a projection is, and introjection would be the opposite of this. So instead of projecting our feelings onto someone else, an introjection is when we unconsciously absorb things from our environment into who we are. So this happens first, normally, through psychologically healthy people when we're very young and we take in our caregiver's voice, right? Whether it's our parents, grandparents, we take in this voice through morals, values, actions, among other things. And then as we grow older, we absorb things from our teachers, from our family, from our friends. And the result of this can be either positive or negative. So positively, when we introject traits such as compassion or loyalty. And negatively, we may see ourselves as worthless or incompetent. So basically, we internalize views that other people hold, and it becomes a part of who we are. Did I lose anybody? Is everybody kind of hanging on here to a little bit? Sort of? All right. So perhaps it might be best to illustrate these concepts with examples. So when we see our parents take care of their parents, we absorb this concept of taking care of one's parents as important. When we see our parents fight over the bill when they're out to dinner, we absorb this concept of paying for our friends or our family's meals. When we see our parents complain about the weight that they've gained, we absorb this concept of what an ideal body image or body weight would be. When we hear our parents gossip about other parents or children, we develop an idea of how people should act based on their criticism. So we start to form these should statements, which oftentimes materialize as our parents' voice in our head, which is directed to us. So for instance, I should pay next time, or you should call your parents, you should lose weight, you should make more money. These kind of thoughts pop into our head with the voice of our parents. And these statements create this set of unwritten rules, which end up governing our lives. So they define the actions that we should take based on these values that have been absorbed by us, intentionally or not. Now, before I start talking about questioning or getting rid of these, I wanted to say that not all of these are bad. Some of these unwritten rules are not particular to our families, but sometimes encompass larger groups of people, such as ethnic groups or cultural societies. So for instance, within the Asian American community, it's important to do well in school and to get into a good college. As Americans, it's held of value to be self-made, to make it on your own, whereas in Asian countries, the larger group is held as more important than the individual. Either way, it's necessary for us to have similar unwritten rules as other people that we regularly interact with, because then those interactions go smoother, right? So for instance, meeting somebody, going for a handshake versus like a bow, or if you're out to dinner with the check dance, which I kind of hinted at earlier, when the check comes to a dinner between a group of friends and everyone fights over who's going to pay. So if someone doesn't offer to pay, then they're seen as someone who's ungrateful, whether they are or not. So perhaps they didn't grow up with this kind of idea, so they were unaware that they're supposed to participate in this dance. But whatever the reason, it throws a wrench into this social interaction because the shared value isn't there. Thus, we need this kind of shared unwritten rule to help us in our relationships. And then, of course, there are actually written down rules, which we're supposed to adhere to as well. There's a quote from one of Rennyo's letters. So Rennyo, the 8th head abbot of our school of Buddhism, he was very famous for writing these letters and then sending them out so that people could read them amongst the communities. So he was the first kind of, emailer or sort of like social media where you were able to spread this kind of information very quickly. And he states in one of his letters, first of all, outwardly take the laws of the state as fundamental. Do not hold any of the kami or gods, Buddhas or bodhisattvas in contempt. Do not slander other sects or teachings. Do not slight the provincial military governors or local landowners, but meet fixed yearly tributes and payments in officials in full. Besides that, take the principles of humanity and justice as essential. Inwardly, rely single-heartedly and steadfastly on Amida Tathagata for birth in the Pure Land in the afterlife, and give no thought to any of the sundry practices and miscellaneous good acts. When we entrust ourselves without a single doubt, we will be born without fail in the true and real Pure Land of utmost bliss. With this understanding, one is to be declared a Nembutsu follower who has realized faith through Amida Tathagata's other power. So Rennyo, one of the most important and influential figures within Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, taught that it's very important for us to follow the laws of the state, of the land, of the country that we live in, especially, outwardly, whereas inwardly, we have this law of the Dharma as being what's most important. So follow the law of the land, even though it's the Buddha Dharma, that's the law within our heart. But now I wanted to get into how it's helpful in our lives to question these should statements. The Buddha taught that we should question our actions and the traditions that motivate them in order to see what's beneficial to us and what's not. So the quote that I read earlier is from the Kalama Sutra. When the Buddha went to Kalama, some of the people there asked him about some Brahmas who came earlier and expounded their own doctrines while denigrating others. So this left the Kalama people in doubt. Who should they believe? Who should they not believe? And from this, the Buddha answered that one can't just go off of legends, traditions, or what someone else told you to be true. You have to know for yourself that this is true. He then goes on to explain that when actions are rooted in the three poisons, in greed, in anger, in hate, then they're unskillful and they cause harm instead of good for the welfare of the self and for the people around them. But when actions lack the three poisons, then they're skillful. They cause good for the welfare of the self and those around them. It doesn't cause harm to anybody. And so to apply this concept to what I've been talking about up until now, we need to analyze these should statements in our mind and see the rationality behind it. Are they rooted in greed and anger and hate, or are they not? Will it lead to actions that are good for us or for bad for us? It can be difficult to release ourselves from these kind of statements, which have been a part of us for so long. They're instrumental in developing who we are as a person when we're children, creating our identity as we get older. But I believe that being Jodo Shinshu Buddhists is one way that can really aid us in this process. In understanding that Amida Buddha accepts us as we exist, wherever or however we are in life right now. Amida Buddha does not accept us based on conditions, based on requirements, or how we should or should not be. We are accepted exactly as we are, as imperfectly as we are. Then we can let go of these unwritten rules enough to see them clearly and decide if we want to continue living our lives by them. So for instance, Amida accepts me, whether I have a bigger house than my cousin or not. So is it worth it for me to overwork myself in order to get one? No, not in my opinion. Amida accepts me whether I eat healthy or not. So should I finish this dozen of donuts that I bought this morning? I could. Amida would still accept me, but it wouldn't be helpful for me to do so. Amida accepts me whether I visit my grandparents' grave or not. So do I still need to go? No, like Amida still accepts me if I don't go and I don't clean or I don't visit them. But I want to. It keeps me connected to my family. It makes me happy. So thus, bringing us back full circle to Hatsubon today, we have these wonderful customs and traditions that we do every year. I think Reverend Shinseki talked about the meaning of Obon, going back to the story of Mokuren and how he wanted to free his mother from the realm of hungry ghosts. So his relationship with his mother is very interesting. And depending on where you read the legend from, how Mokuren's mother ended up in the realm of hungry ghosts is different. But one of the ones that I thought was perhaps the most compelling was talking about how his mother ended up there, which is a realm for people who are selfish in life, because she was very selfish with her love for her son, that she would get things for him at the expense of other children or other families, that she would only concern herself with him at the expense of other people. And so being very selfish with her love for her son, not that she did not love him, but almost loved him too much, she ended up in this realm of hungry ghosts. In understanding this kind of feeling that she had, she must have modeled certain things for Mokuren when he was a child, whether it was that he was the most important thing or the best, or that other people were not worth it, or one should always love their children at the expense of other people. He must have picked up on certain things that he would eventually have to let go of when entering into the monkhood and studying under the Buddha. So having that kind of experience, I think, is an important model for all of us. And then being able to let go of those things, and the mother, being able to receive the benefit of Mokuren letting go of those things, shows the impact that it has, not just on ourselves, but also relieving perhaps guilt or pain from the past, and then opening up a door for future generations. It's important for us to really understand ourselves and who we are, and then through the working of Amida Buddha, being able to let go of perhaps these things that are harming us, that are hurting us, and then living in more of a peaceful or happy way will allow us not just to do good for ourselves, but also for the people around us. So in the spirit of that, in the spirit of Hatsubon, I hope we can all question the customs and traditions that we do every year, not because they are unimportant or we shouldn't do them anymore, but in doing so, it deepens our motivation to continue doing them and brings them even more meaning when doing these traditions. If you'd all please join me in closing Gassho. Now, kalamas don't go by reports, by legends, by traditions, by scripture, by logical conjecture, by inference, by analogies, by agreement through pondering views, by probability or by thought. This contemplative is our teacher. When you know for yourselves that these qualities are skillful, these qualities are blameless, these qualities are praised by the wise, these qualities, when adopted and carried out, lead to welfare and to happiness, then you should enter and remain in them. Namo Amida Betsuin. 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 Thank you again.
With reverence, I remain. Namo Amida Betsuin. Namo Amida Betsuin. Namo Amida Betsuin.
Please rise to the Gatha, one of San 2 on page 239. Please be seated. Excuse me for giving you the wrong thing. So on behalf of the Buddhist Temple of Salinas, I wish to express appreciation to the following people. First, Reverend Hamasaki for being our special guest speaker and wonderful Obon song master. He is known among PCA ministers as the voice. Thank Reverend Shinseki and Minister's Assistant San Juan and David Correia for officiating, the Hosei Shinseki for being part of it. I'd like to recognize Bill and Gail Wurtenberg for instructing and creating the lanterns for Obon, and also I'd like to thank Jane Shinseki for setting them up. Hosei was the following couple members donated Hosei for the 19 fruit, Mr. and Mrs. Markania, sweet, Mr. and Mrs. Genji Oishi. Also like to express appreciation of all the donations and offertories made to the temple. Minister's Assistant David Correia will give the closing reading.
Please join me in Gassho. The wish to save all beings is the wish to carry them across the great ocean of birth and death. It is the aspiration to bring all beings to the attainment of supreme nirvana. It is the heart of great love and great compassion, which arises from the wisdom of immeasurable light. Namo Myo Butsu. Namo Myo Butsu. Namo Myo Butsu.
Thank you. Are there any announcements? No.
It's been a long time since I've been up here, so a little shaky. The reason I'm here is August 20th. We have our Tri-Temple golf tournament. So far, we haven't had too many signups. I got one today. We have the winning team, Temple team. The last time we played was Ted Uchida, Mark Yamaguchi, Davis Oniska, and Larry Iwahara. I don't know if we want these same people to win, so they went to a temple team. All you need is just 2 temple members, and you can get 2 other people to play along with you. If you don't have a team, sign up, send your registration, your $175, send it to me, we'll get you on a team. All right? This year, we have a item that should bring in a little more players. Reverend James Shinseki donated a hole-in-one contest, which is worth $10,000. If you can hit a ball straight at 187 yards on the hole number 13 at Salinas Golf and Country Club. Oh no, excuse me, Crazy Horse Ranch. We changed our name a couple years ago, so anyway, it's hole 13, 187 yards. The ladies, they'll be teeing off, I think it's 157 yards. So start practicing, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Right now, we have room for more donations. We're looking for a couple donations. Minimum donation is $100. The most that we have received so far is 500. Salinas, Monterey, and Watsonville temples each donated $500. We had a couple other donors that donated $500. So please don't be shy. We can use the money for prizes. Anyway, remember, August 20th, we will be serving dinner after the tournament, and we'll have awards, which will be cash prizes. All right. Thank you very much, and hope to see you on the course. Thank you.
Are there any other announcements? I'd like to inform the Hatsubon families that after the service, be sure to take the lanterns with you as a memento of this occasion. This is the beginning of the day of remembrance and also reflection of the true meaning of the Lord. We as a Sangha are able to join together to enjoy and appreciate sharing the spirit of Obon. Please go to the Kaikon and enjoy today's lunch and program for your enjoyment. The congregation can now approach. Thank you for